4th Global Conference on the Sustained Eradication of Child Labor. Buenos Aires Declaration, 16th November 2017. We've gathered at the 4th Global Conference on the Sustained Eradication of Child Labor in Buenos Aires to take stock of the progress made since the 3rd Global Conference on Child Labor in Brasilia in 2013, to assess obstacles and agree on measures to accelerate the eradication of child labor and forced labor and promote full and productive employment and decent work for all. Noting that there are 152 million girls and boys still engaged in child labor, with 73 million in its worst forms. 25 million people, including more than 4 million children, are still subject to forced labor, and 71 million youth are unemployed. Recognizing that child labor, notably its worst forms, and forced labor are major violations and abuses of human rights and dignity. Recognizing that the 2030 Agenda represents a unique opportunity, noting its Target 8.7 to eradicate child labor in all its forms by 2025 and forced labor, modern slavery, and human trafficking by 2030. Recognizing the importance of rural poverty reduction, the extension of social protection, and the access to public, free, complete, universal quality education. Recognizing that most child labor is in agriculture. Noting that the unprecedented scale of migration and forced displacement has increased the number of children and adults who are at risk of becoming victims of child labor and forced labor. Noting that child labor and forced labor are exacerbated by crisis situations arising from conflicts and disasters. Underlining that the eradication of child labor and forced labor requires commitment to action and effective implementation of the relevant normative framework. We declare our commitment to the eradication of child labor and forced labor and call upon governments, social partners, international and regional organizations, civil society organizations, and all other relevant stakeholders to take up the following actions. Policy and governance. Accelerate efforts to end child labor in all its forms by 2025 and to eradicate forced labor by 2030. Seek to align as a matter of urgency policies, strategies, and time-bound action plans at corresponding levels. Promote integrated, coherent, and effective public services and policies. Strengthen the capacity of and involve public authorities, social partners, civil society, local communities, and enterprises. Strengthen the organizational capacity of local communities to prevent, detect, and eliminate child labor and forced labor. Promote the effective implementation of Conventions numbers 138, 182, 29, 105, and the Protocol of 2014. Strengthen national legal frameworks and their enforcement. Strengthen the capacity of labor inspection and other enforcement services. Take effective measures to prevent child labor and forced labor. Build and maintain national social security systems. Ensure equal access to free public and compulsory education for all children. Retain children, especially girls and other children in vulnerable situations, in quality and inclusive educational systems. Favor evidence-based strategies to promote a smooth school-to-work transition. Promote the transition from informal to formal economies, social development, and innovation. Empower children and young people. Promote inclusive rural development to eradicate and prevent child labor and forced labor. Take measures to protect all migrants and children on the move. Promote fair labor recruitment practices. Strengthen actions to eradicate child labor and forced labor in crisis situations arising from conflicts and disasters. Knowledge, data, and monitoring. Regularly collect and disseminate disaggregated data. Produce at a national level standardized indicators. Support international cooperation for the exchange of evidence-based data and best practices. Produce global estimates and stimulate sharing best practices on child labor and on forced labor. Conduct research on child labor and forced labor. Partnerships and innovation. Promote global partnerships involving governments, employers, and workers' organizations and other relevant stakeholders. Promote Alliance 8.7. Promote increased funding at all levels for the fight against child labor and forced labor. Promote sub-regional and regional initiatives aimed at the sustained eradication of child labor. Encourage enterprises to carry out due diligence in their supply chains. Encourage governments to consider preventative policies in their supply chains. Support widened sharing and application of best practices. 4th Global Conference on the Sustained Eradication of Child Labor. Buenos Aires Declaration, 16th November 2017.